Welcome to Eugene Holden's Academy of Self-Mastery, where transformation meets action. I'm Eugene Holden. I'm one of your guides on this journey of personal growth, mindset shifts, and deep self-awareness. Each episode, we dive into the tools, wisdom, and strategies you need to break through limitations and step into your highest potential. No fluff, no shortcuts here, just real conversations, practical insights, and a community dedicated to mastery in every area of life. So, if you're ready to unlock your power, elevate your mindset, and create a life by design, then let's get started. Welcome to Eugene Holden's Academy of Self-Mastery. Welcome to the deep end. Hey, welcome everybody to another beautiful episode of Eugene Holden's Academy of Self-Mastery. Obviously, I'm Eugene Holden, and I'm with my co-host today. This is the fantastic Elle Grinnell. Hello, Elle.
Happy to be here. Start to say hola. I say hola now all the time. Hola, Eugene.
Oh, well, hola. A while ago, it was aloha.
Aloha. I have traded aloha for more.
Which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just real fast because I like to explain when people see the Academy Eugene Holden's Academy of Self-Mastery, they ask about the lowercase s. Why didn't we capitalize the S? And the reason simply is this, is that, well, Elle, why don't you say the reason? Because
I do know the lowercase is the S, that is it's us, the ego part. The lowercase is the part that's judging and scrambling and all of those kinds of things. The uppercase S is the one that is our self. It is our truth. It is our connection. It is our purpose. And in that place, there is never any fear, doubt, and worry. So it is capital because it just is. And the lowercase one is doing its best, our lowercase self.
Yeah, doing its best. And that's the part of us that this is what this is about, is mastering that part or those parts,
Mm-hmm.
that talk about I'm not enough, I can't do this, whatever, it is. And as Elle said, doing its best.
Mm-hmm.
So again, welcome to Eugene Holden's Academy of Self-Mastery. And so Elle and I were speaking about this before we went live on what we wanted to dive in to. What was that?
That was just something outside that was quite grand, but it's past.
Okay. Quite grand indeed. So we were speaking before we went live, and what I love about this podcast, Elle, is that nothing is really scripted. And so we pick a topic. Sometimes we may pick a topic a few days prior. Sometimes I may ask, so what's on your heart? But today we did speak about it a day or so ago. And at first Elle was talking to wanting to speak about courage, but then that shifted to
Bravery. So, in looking at it, because when you're a writer, you often look for synonyms, right? So that you don't get stuck using the same word of the thousands of words that are possible. And I saw kind of a progression that brave is to face courage, and then courage is to face danger. So now we're up in the ante, so to speak, right? And so it's to face danger fearlessly. And then that made me realize, by having been done the 28 days, the mastery of self for so many years, that one of the concepts in there is fearlessness. And fearlessness is the ability to feel the fear and do it anyway, knowing, having the faith that you are being held and led and all of that in a such a high level, right, from your greater power. So you're able to be fearless in the face of fear because you have faith. And that's something that takes courage right? And bravery to get there. It takes practice. Very few people just walk out the front door and say, okay, today I'm going to be brave. It's when we're faced with these opportunities that we get to level up to the point of fearlessness.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I was speaking with someone earlier this evening because I knew I had an idea that we were going to speak about courage. And they asked me, so how would you, for you, Eugene, how would you explain courage? What does that mean? How do you get to courage?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that came to mind, Elle, was having the willingness to let go of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Having the willingness to let go of the fear. And for me, over the past how many ever years, and I'm glad that that part's done now, but it took a long time for me to become willing to let go of the fear. Number one, I didn't know how to, what
Right.
just let that go. What do you mean just let that go? I don't know how to just let that go. And as I began to think about, okay, well, I'm ready to let this go, then that little part said, okay, but who would I be without this?
Mm.
Because I'm so used to being afraid. Who
Yeah.
who would I be? Yeah, so having the willingness to let go of that fear, even having, oh, I like that, even having the courage, because letting go of the fear takes courage.
Yes, exactly. And that question, who would I be without this, makes me have to say, welcome to the deep end.
Right? Welcome to the deep end. Yeah, who would you be?
Yeah, that's a big ask. And when you get quiet, right, into the alpha level of consciousness outside of the ego, you can get those answers. I've been spending a lot of time lately on the intelligence of the heart as the
Mm,
only organ that has neurotransmitters to the brain, right? It actually has more neurotransmitters to the brain than the brain has to the heart, which means that the heart has more intelligence. It has more to say, than the brain. And because there's no ego in the heart, it speaks without fear, doubt, and worry. All these sayings speaking from the heart, from the heart. That was heartfelt. There's so many of these things because of that. And so I've been really leaning into that a lot lately because we do transformational meditation, which is amazing. And we don't always have time to get quiet or not in a place or whatever. But at any moment you can just ask your heart, what would love do? And I don't want to say it's that simple because it does take practice to be able to discern if it's your ego pretending to be your heart, masquerading, or if it's truly from the heart. But we know it comes with a feeling of serenity, peace, love, and joy. Those messages do. And I've been helping my mom by writing some affirmations or statements for her every morning. She writes them and then lets it percolate through the day. And then at the end of the day, journals about how that played a role in the day or the observations that came up, because we know how the reticular activator works, right? You put something in there and then it's going to show up. And so today's was, if I can choose to be anything, I choose love. That feels really good.
yeah, it does, right? If I can choose to be anything, I choose love. I choose to be love. And I love what you were saying about, the heart knows, what, being a musician, and then also a spiritual counselor and all of that. And, we hear, right, when people go, well, I know it here. I know it here. Well, we can't really know it intellectually. We believe it, but we know it in our heart. And
Mm-hmm.
musicians play by heart
Mm-hmm.
because the heart knows, the heart. And I love what you said about, there is no ego in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Now there may be some, Al, who are listening, and when we go to the heart and go, okay, what would love do? And as simple as that may sound, you know, it does take practice to listen. But also, I want to encourage people when you hear us say, so what would love do, to don't poo-poo that off. And if you find yourself going, yeah, yeah, that's the ego trying to keep that part from you. Right. So that in mastering, that lowercase, s, if you ask that question or you want to ask that question, and there's a part of you that goes, that won't work. Trust us when we say that's the ego trying to keep you playing small. So the
100%.
invitation is have the courage to ask.
Have the courage to ask. The other thing when you were saying that out loud had me thinking about how, like, we also say things like something about that doesn't feel right.
Right.
Right. And that's from the heart. Nobody ever says, well, I guess there are some specific situations, but we wouldn't say something about that situation doesn't smell right. We might say it stinks, but we really come from the heart. And
Right.
so just backing up, it takes bravery, it takes courage, it takes fearlessness
Yes.
to be willing to know that your heart didn't actually break.
Right.
Because, we've been through heartache, we've been through loss. Our heart has been broken and that we cannot love anymore. And that loops back to what you were just saying. It's the ego trying to protect us from being hurt. So it's speaking as though if it's coming from the heart.
Right.
But if you asked your heart would say, I cannot be broken.
I cannot be broken. It's the ego going, oh, woe is me. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it hurts. And that's because we associate love with the heart, right? And so if our loving relationship gets broken, we get confused and we think, oh, therefore they broke our heart, right? And so all that was broken was the relationship, which generally means somewhere along the line communication broke.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's not as deep as the heart.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And for me, at a deeper level, L, that relationship that or the communication that broke down, maybe that's a signal that the heart is guiding us to something better for our purpose.
Mhm.
Better, I'm going to say better for our souls. Because our soul knows, because it's connected to our heart, which is connected to the higher power and all
Yes.
of that good stuff. Yeah.
M- Many times we lose a job or lose a relationship or a loved one passes. And when we can look back, excuse me, we can see the growth in it.
Yeah.
But in the moment,
In the moment.
it feels a lot more like manure than growth.
Right.
But, what do they put on things to help them grow? Manure. So,
Exactly, exactly. And I'm going to even say it this way, right? Because sometimes we experience, that's bullshit, right? And that bullshit can be used as manure for the new growth. When we have the courage and the bravery to face it and be willing to grow, be willing to grow, because we are speaking about courage and bravery. I love that. That bravery is to face courage, and courage is to face
danger fearlessly.
danger fearlessly. Yeah.
And danger is a perception.
Yeah.
If I see a spider, I'm in danger. I
Mm.
am in danger. Really? You're in danger?
And for me, when I see a spider, I'm like, oh, wow, cool. It's a spider, and I'll let that live.
So that danger is so, like, you and I glow on stage. we just become our alter ego or something when we're
Right.
presenting and sharing and speaking, whereas other people, that danger is life threatening,
Right.
you know? So facing danger fearlessly is really the willingness to look at the danger and say, well, what else could it mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would I be like without this fear?
Yeah.
You know? So I've gotten better. I can now put a cup over a spider and then slide a paper underneath it and then go outside and put it on a tree.
There you go. And all the spiders in the world, thank you for that. And that's, I want to go back to that question because I think it's a powerful question. Who would I be if I let this go? Who would I be? And for me, the hint is I would be more of myself. You mentioned that you and I when we're on stage we glow and we because this is what we, but it wasn't always like that for me.
Mm,
I was like, okay, I'm not getting up there, but there is a part that loved it. Can't
hmm
Nope, I'm not doing that. Being that little small self, right? Afraid of being judged, afraid of what people may say, afraid of not doing a good job, afraid of whatever the fear was, right? But there was that part within me that kept saying, no, come on, come on. And so the answer to that question for me is, who would I be if I were to let this go? If I were to let go of that fear of speaking in front of people, who would I be? I would be happy. And
yeah.
more importantly, I would be of service.
Yes. Yes. 100%. My gift of being able to speak in public, I didn't know I had. I just knew as a child growing up, I didn't mind having the lead in something, or when you got in little groups, I would speak, be the speaker. And I used to just be blown away, especially even in high school and college. Oh, you all do all the work and I just have to say it? Like that was mind blowing to me.
Like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then what I learned was, beside that, it being a gift that I'm grateful for
yeah.
always deeply, is that there were times when I would speak and loved ones would be present
Mm.
and I would be nervous. That's the only time I would be nervous. And so it took me a while to realize that that's what was happening. Well, for speaking, I don't call it nerves, I call it butterflies. I would have butterflies. And then I realized that a part of me loved them so much that if I let them down, they would be disappointed in me. And so that took, some work. Like, why would I feel that way? Why would I believe that? Do they judge me? Do I feel judged? There's just so many facets to that little thing. And so I've since released it. But I remember telling people, no, you can't come.
Mm. Really? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and then you face the fear and do it anyways,
Right.
right? Yeah. And I would just let them know I get really nervous when people I love are in the audience. And
Mm.
then, of course, oh, that's crazy. Oh, no. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just sharing that with you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the one step. The admitting allows the willingness, which allows the transformation
Yeah.
to process always.
Say that again, Elle.
It's the, well, first speaking it out, right? So that's the awareness that allows the willingness, because I'm aware that I'm nervous if loved ones are there, allows the willingness, but I'm willing to let them attend.
Yeah.
And then that willingness then brings forth the transformation.
Yeah.
So now I'm at a point where it doesn't matter who's in the audience, literally. It
Right.
could be my biggest mentor, it could be, I would say, my biggest adversary, but nobody's coming to mind except for the bad people in superhero movies. Um,
Okay.
it's like I don't think I have any adversaries
Right.
anymore, because you get out of that little s.
Right.
and into the capital S.
Right. Right.
So yes, the awareness allows the willingness, which allows the transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. The awareness, the admitting, the awareness, yeah, allows the willingness, and the willingness allows the transformation. And that's a beautiful thing, right? To have the willingness to transform, or more simply put, the willingness to change.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an interesting thing for me with some people, me experiencing some people who are just so afraid of change.
Yes.
When, as you know, the old saying goes, right? The only thing that doesn't change is change. I mean, everything is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's that lowercase s, that little small self, that egoic part of us that wants to keep things the status quo, you know,
Yes.
thinking that it's protecting us. Yeah.
Always,
Yeah.
always. And because of all the neuroscience work that I've been doing forever, just been so fascinated with the brain for the last 25 years, is that's homeostasis. So we're hardwired. It's nothing to do with little s for homeostasis, because back in the creation of the brain, people who changed didn't come back. We didn't know if they left the cave, what happened. We never thought maybe they found a new tribe and are happy. We thought they must have got murdered or killed, right? So when they tried different things, you try to bury, oh, someone died. Because when you think about it, somebody has to have tried all of these things that we now eat to know which ones kill us.
Right. Right.
And so we're hardwired for homeostasis, which is good. We just want our homeostasis to be a place of reward, of pleasure, of happiness, of healthiness, like create that homeostasis,
Right.
not the one that's afraid of change.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Homeostasis, and the body, I love the body in that it naturally wants to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So does the emotional body, so does
Mm-hmm.
the mental, body. I would say so does the spiritual body, but the spiritual body is already healed. Yeah.
Yes.
Again,
Yeah.
going back to that lowercase s, the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual body doesn't need the mastering. Yeah.
No. And that's the other saying, time heals all wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing, especially when we feel the heart is broken or shattered. It does mend itself for most people, unless we choose to stay stuck in the pain, the memory, the miscommunication. So again, it takes bravery, it takes courage, it takes fearlessness to be able to say, this is going to be okay. I have faith,
Yeah.
and I trust that I will come out through on the other side. And when my husband passed suddenly from an aneurysm, it was the faith of knowing that I was being held that got me through it, because I didn't think I could do it.
Mm.
I didn't feel brave enough. So it was when I connected to my truth and just gave it over. I can't do this on my own. I need you to carry me through this.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. But I asked. I
Yeah.
was willing to be carried.
Yeah. Yeah. And what comes up for me in hearing that takes a willingness to surrender. I can't do this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then going back to that beautiful word, right? To trust.
Mm-hmm.
That is taken care of. That trust, to trust that we're taken care of when we ask.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that little small else, one of those one of those ego parts of us will go, no, I got this. Yeah, okay. How's that been working out for you?
And another little S is people aren't trustworthy.
Yeah.
So I can't ask for help because I can't trust anyone. There goes those universal qualifiers. Anyone?
Anyone? You can't trust anyone? Yeah.
No, everyone's bad, Eugene.
Everyone?
Okay, well,
Have you met everyone? the one that I like, and I don't say a darn thing about it, but I just smile. Well, we all do this. I'm like, all of us? Maybe all of us don't do that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Being brave, and but again, having the willingness to trust that everything's okay in spite of what might be going on.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
even in
You,
the midst of it, go.
good. Well, what was coming to mind is I think this would be a good time to have people experience breathing into their heart
Mm,
and learning if it's possible to hear those messages,
beautiful.
if it can be that simple for them, if it needs more practice, or if it needs guidance.
Yeah.
Right. um, because it goes beyond just talking about it.
Right.
It's actionable. So in a moment, if we close our eyes, that it's safe to do so, and start breathing, something that you shared with me or that I heard from you and Reverend Melissa, was breathing through the belly. So today we'll breathe in, pulling the belly in with the breath and expanding here, and then releasing and letting go down into the belly, which feels a little different for some people. We'll do that just a few rounds,
Okay.
and then just ask the heart a message. And so with your eyes closed, it helps minimize external distractions so that you can focus on what it feels like to breathe and that breath of expansion and release. Breathing in, getting the oxygen into all the parts of your body so that they may flourish and thrive. And exhaling, letting go of anything that's no longer serving us in this moment. And now do what I just spoke of. So breathe in deeply, drawing the belly in as you're pulling in the air, and then letting it go and relax. And just two more times. Breath in, release. And then as deeply and fully as you're able, drawing it in, letting it go. And imagine yourself just settling into your heart like it's the most comfortable place on the planet. And then ask, what do I need to know? I'm listening. And then just thank your heart for that moment of connection and drifting back into the awareness of here and now. And when you feel good, allow your eyes to flutter open, coming back. And I would like to add that the reason why the answer to the question was so short is because the heart and the soul and spirit and God are very concise. If you're getting a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda, well, that was the ego pretending to be the heart in this moment. Those messages are very concise. They're very loving, kind, benevolent, supportive. And sometimes I sink into the heart because I want to know, if there's something, is this a good idea? And the heart will say, you're always loved.
Mm.
And then consciously I go, that doesn't answer the question.
Mm.
But it does, because it means that it's unfolding, and to just allow it, right? If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. If it feels good, do it,
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah.
So it does take a little practice, and it just gets easier. Like anything else, took me forever to learn how to ride a bike,
Right?
but I can. My mom wouldn't let me give up. That's how much she loved me.
Mm.
And I'm grateful, right?
Mm,
So practice.
yeah.
Whatever it is you're practicing, an instrument, I'm practicing a foreign language, whatever it is, just have faith
Yeah.
that it's unfolding, it's developing, it's nurturing.
Yeah. And as one of the other co-hosts says, Reverend Melissa, right, that practice makes progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as
Ah,
I've practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. But I feel that that leaves you in the same little loop.
loop. Right. 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 But as we practice, we get to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So practice being love. Practice being willing to let go of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Practice, practice being in joy. How about this one? Practice laughing.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And the practice is the process,
yeah,
and the practice is where we're willing. Just be willing to practice,
yeah.
see what we learn as we go, because very often you can say, well, that didn't work. But the word of caution to that is when we try new things, I'm just going to say we do it 3 times unsuccessfully. And then it allows many to say, well, I tried that. Somebody will say, well, oh, have you ever tried playing an instrument? Yeah, I tried that. You can always tell by the micro expressions or the big expressions. Yeah, I tried that. Like, probably really not.
Right. Tried it
But
once or twice.
we're not meant to do everything, so there's no judgment there, just settling into what feels good. If
Right.
you really want it, and it's a bit of a struggle, right? So like me learning Spanish now, it's a struggle, and I'm willing to keep practicing because I see the end result and I like how that looks
Mm,
and I want to get there.
yeah, yeah,
And then something else you said, oh, yeah, yeah. Here's the other thing, celebrate those little wins. It's that laughter and that joy and that giddiness along the way
yeah.
that light us up, that keep us going, that feed our soul.
Yeah,
And people, we've been taught, don't celebrate. It's, don't be so egotistic, as to be a showing off or whatever. I can't even think of the words that go with it, but you know what I'm trying to
right,
say.
right, right. Yeah. No, be audacious in your beautiful self.
Mm-hmm.
There is something that desired us to be here so that it could show up and show off as itself, not from an ego place, but from a place of love, from a place of light, from a place of service.
Mm-hmm.
I love when I speak with people about their purpose. And I'm like, well, maybe your purpose is just to smile at the very next person that you see, because maybe that smile made
Mm-hmm.
their.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How cool is that?
One of my biggest compliments is when somebody says, that's exactly what I needed to hear today.
Right. Yeah.
I served my purpose in that moment.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Elle, thank you so, so very much for being on this journey with me in this Eugene Holden's Academy of Self Mastery. Because we are having a good time. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. So, any last words you want to say for this episode?
Ooh, last words, famous last words. I think it would be just to recap the idea of bravery, courage, and fearlessness,
Please.
and the willingness. And the one little kind of cherry on the top there would be to remember that we're never alone.
Yeah.
You're not doing so you can step into the heart. You can connect with source, spirit, God, Gaia, your angels, whoever is here for you and with you. And somehow that allows us to take that next step. Just keep stepping.
Just keep stepping. Just keep stepping. All
Thank
right, folks. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for being here. And thank you for for just being a light on the planet, everybody. Everybody. Now, go out and multiply this consciousness.
Yes.
All right. We'll see you next time, folks. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.